What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's project is this engine that came off a riding mower, and the problem is that I just bought it and I don't know if it works. Hopefully we can get it working and then we can use it for a future project. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this engine. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. Now, we're only going to mention what those other options could be. We don't have time to look into them, but if you need more information about these options, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you need to. And if I get enough interest, I'll make a video about it, answering all your questions and concerns. I bought this engine after seeing an online ad and was packaged with some other items. I didn't want all of them, just certain ones, and I got a great deal on them. Although I didn't have a current project for this engine, I do have some future plans that might include it. I don't mind that it's a Tecumseh engine because in the end, it's just another engine to fit to a riding mower. At least that's what I thought, forgetting one of the major rules when buying equipment, which is parts availability. That'll make a little bit more sense later in the video. The first thing I want to check is whether the engine will spin over freely, and if the engine fights back when we get to the compression stroke. That'll let us know if it's worn out. And this is how you don't want a project to start off. I can't turn the pulley on the engine, which means the engine is stuck. That's not a huge problem just yet, as the rings could be rusted to the cylinder walls, so we just need to break it loose. The easiest way for me to do that is to remove the spark plug and spray some sort of lubricant in the cylinder and then letting it sit for a while. The spray I'll be using is PB Blaster, which is advertised to loosen rusted or frozen parts caused by rust and corrosion. I've used this product many times before, but I've also used Marvel Mystery Oil as well. You don't have to fill the cylinder, but you need to put a couple of ounces in it. After that, we'll let it sit for a while, then we'll see if the engine has loosened up any. So it's been over an hour since we sprayed the cylinder, and I still can't get the pulley to move. Instead of trying to rotate the pulley, I'm going to go to the top of the engine instead so I can turn the nut on the flywheel. Now, since I sprayed fluid into the cylinder, I need to remove the spark plug. That way the engine won't try to hydrolock, or basically try to compress a liquid instead of air. This is when I noticed that the screen was loose on top of the engine, which means someone's worked on this before and left this part loose. I have to wonder if they found something bad and just left it alone, leaving it for somebody else to try and fix. Once the screen is out of the way and after replacing the nut, I'll then try and turn the engine with it, and surprisingly we got it to move. However, it's not smooth and it seems to want to get stuck again. Now, this is not good news. More than likely, this engine is severely damaged and isn't good anymore. I think this is the point where the previous person got to, and they basically stopped right here. Now, this sort of damage happens when the engine is ran low on oil. However, after checking the dipstick, I don't see any oil on it, but we can't be sure if someone already drained the oil or if it was ran this way. It's been a few days since I looked at this engine, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. Now, if I was a smart person, I'd also stop right here, but I have been known to make a few bad decisions, and this is going to go down as one of those. I just have to know what broke inside this engine, so I'm going to continue taking it apart to try to find out what happened to it. The first place that could be causing our problem is the ignition coil and flywheel magnets could be hitting each other due to upper bearing wear. But as you can see, if I turn the magnet past the coil, it's not making any contact, so that's not the issue, and we need to keep looking for what's causing our problem. The next thing I'm going to test for is whether the connecting rod is broken inside the engine. To do that, I'm going to use the screwdriver to touch the top of the piston, and once I find it, I'll then turn the flywheel, and I should be able to feel the piston moving inside the cylinder. As you can see, the screwdriver is moving in and out of the spark plug hole, letting us know that the piston is moving up and down in the cylinder, and that means the connecting rod is intact and not broken. If the screwdriver wasn't moving, it would mean that the rod was broken. I didn't even realize it until I was editing this video, but the engine isn't getting stuck like it was before, which is strange. However, the only difference is that I'm turning the engine over in the wrong direction, whereas when I was turning it in the other direction, it was getting stuck in certain places. I found this extremely weird because it should be getting stuck in both directions and not just one way. The next thing I want to check for is that the valve train is working and that the valves are opening and closing like they should be. This will also show that the camshaft inside the engine is not broken. As you can see, they are moving just like they should be, although I have to remind you that I am turning the engine in the wrong direction. That way I can make full revolutions. I'm really confused as to why this engine is getting stuck, and at this point I'm pretty desperate to try to figure out what's going on. So the next thing I want to do is open the engine and take a look inside and hopefully find out why the engine is behaving so strangely. I found more evidence that someone has worked on this engine because there's part of a rag on this bolt head which helps to keep it in the socket while it's being installed. After the pulley is out of the way, I'll just need to remove several bolts and then use a magnet to retrieve the bolts I can't get with my fingers. Now once all the bolts are gone, I'll then persuade the sump off the block. Hopefully we find something interesting inside here because I'm running out of ideas as to why this engine won't spin in the right direction. Once the sump is off the block, I don't see any pieces of metal in there, just minor amounts of sludge, which is quite surprising. Usually it's completely covering the bottom of the sump. That means someone changed the oil on this engine on a regular basis. So here are the gears that turn the camshaft and the oil pump, and I don't see any missing or broken teeth, so I'm really confused now. I was expecting to see something wrong here, but I don't. Now I can't turn the engine over very well without the sump supporting some of the shafts, but from what I can see, there's really nothing wrong here. It's at this point I considered taking the crankshaft out of the block because there might be something wrong with the journal, but at this point I really wasn't thinking straight because I just couldn't understand what was going on. Now to take the crankshaft out, I have to remove the flywheel, so I took out my frustration on the crankshaft bolt. I don't normally use my pulley puller on something this large, so this is the normal method I use to remove a flywheel. After loosening the flywheel, I can't lift it away from the engine just yet because it's hitting the ignition coil. That means we need to remove the coil first, followed by the flywheel. I don't work on these larger engines on a regular basis, so I'm kind of working through these steps as we go along. So this is when I made a huge mistake. This is the point where I should have removed the flywheel and found the source of my problem, but for some reason I decided to change course and remove the head instead. I can only guess that I wanted to remove the head, that way I can remove the piston as well for full disassembly, and I wanted to use the flywheel to help turn the engine over. After taking off the muffler's heat shield, I then started to remove the head bolts. I also had to get part of the valve train out of the way so I could get to the last head bolt as well. I have to say, this engine is very well made and it's pretty easy to take apart. I've taken a few other riding mower engines apart, but I really enjoyed working on this one by far. If I get a chance to find another one of these, I wouldn't mind buying it for a future project. I have worked on a Briggs V-twin before, but I didn't have to take it apart. It just needed carburetor work, so I can't really say anything about its internal design, but I will say that it was a very smooth running engine. Once the head is out of the way, we can see the top of the piston, and although it's a little bit dirty, I don't see any sort of damage to it. The next thing to do is to turn the engine so we can examine the cylinder walls for damage as well. After giving it a light cleaning, I hate to say it, but I don't see any scoring or damage to the cylinder wall. So now I'm extremely confused as to what's wrong with this thing. This time I'm going to turn the engine in the right direction and see what happens. As you can see, it got stuck again, so this time I'll turn it the wrong way to bring the piston to the top of its travel. It was at this point I then decided to remove the flywheel. As soon as I removed the flywheel, I found the problem. The alternator coil apparently broke loose and made contact with the inside of the flywheel and jamming it. If you look at the mounting posts, you can see that they're definitely broken, and I don't think I can fix it without adding more material to them. If I put the flywheel back onto the engine and turn it in the right direction, it's not getting stuck anymore, so that was definitely the reason why this engine was getting stuck in the first place. So I got a little overzealous when it came to finding out what was wrong with this engine, but at least we found out what the problem was. Now to get this engine working again, we don't need the alternator coil as it's mainly for charging the battery for electric start, but that does mean we need to put the battery on a charger after every use so we can start it the next time. Since we took the engine apart, we also need to replace the head gasket and the sump gasket, and luckily those parts are still available. If we're going to replace those parts, why not also replace the alternator? Now we could, but the part is very expensive and would basically be 4 times the cost of what I bought this engine for, so I'm not going to bother with it. So here's another option as to why the engine would only turn in one direction. One reason could be that the starter gear was in partial contact with the flywheel and allowing it to turn in one direction. However, the starter might have internal damage that jams in one direction but not in the other. Now the fix would be to obviously replace the starter. Now this would be a very rare case, but there's always a possibility. So my question is, if you needed to put a used engine on your riding mower, would you try and stick with the same make of engine, or would you consider a different brand? Would it matter to you that it used to be a Briggs engine under the hood, but it's now a Tecumseh? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.